So welcome everyone. I'm very excited to bring this gem cutting workshop through Virtu Gem today for everybody joining us. And I want to introduce you to our very special speaker today. Adriano Mole is joining us from Brazil, and he has a PhD in materials engineering from Red Mat, and he's a specialist in gem and jewelry design from the design school. And he's a professor in the head of the Center of Gemstone and Lapidary at the University of Minas Gerais, State since 2018. So he's going to bring a lot of really interesting and fun knowledge to us about different ways that you can cut gems. And it's kind of, we hope, the beginning of a series of workshops that are going to help us all talk about unique gemstone cutting designs. So Adriano, I'll let you take it from there, and welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan, for the kind introduction. I also want to thank both you and Jessica for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be here showcasing some of my research with you all. I will start sharing my screen right now. One second, please. I hope you can all see it from here. If not, please let me know. So I am actually from the State University, just as Susan introduced me. We have a Minas Gerais state in Brazil is the main producer of gemstones in our country. And so we have a specialization course in lapidary design and in jewelry design. And that's where I come from. I've been there since 2005. And this lecture that I brought to you today, it's about possibilities of lapidary design. It is an early presentation that I do in our courses, and it aims to showcase a lot of different things, because usually we gem cutters don't always innovate in our designs. And the way the market changes and everything, it makes total sense for us to do it, because if not, we will be doing cuts since the same style that we used to do in the 1500s. And there is no need for doing that. Today, we have a lot of different technologies and different knowledge about it. So we don't have to be cutting. We can evolve our cutting in the same way that the products, such as the ones showcased on the screen right now, they evolve to be part of contemporary jewelry. So the topics that we will be seeing today will cover two main areas. At the first time, the beginning of it, we'll talk a little about the theory of lapidary and showing some classification of the cutting styles. This is done so we can better understand the different approaches we can take to lapidary. We will go way beyond just the basic faceting and cabochon differentiation, because people usually classify it as just faceting, cabochon, and mixed cuts. So we will see, by understanding the theory of why we cut and how we can cut, we can go to the second part of it, which is we can begin to design and to cut in different ways than it has been done up to today. So in this first part, I will try to make a very educational presentation about the 4 different areas of cutting that we usually employ in lapidary. This is done so that we can understand better the ways to go. So these cutting styles, they can be divided in faceted styles, such as the upper left one, which is the faceting styles of cutting. They are all done with facets, with plain cuts. It's a bit different of the cabochons that you all know. It's usually rounded stones. We also have on the bottom right some sculptures that's different than facets and different than cabochons. And so these three main areas are comprise the most kinds of lapidary techniques that we find. And together with the three of them, you can see here in the pink stone that it is a cabochon, right? But it has, I hope you can see it, it has tiny works on the surface.
So you'll check.
Excuse me? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, no problem. So on the pink stone here, we can see that it is a cabochon, but it has tiny works on the surface. So it gives this cabochon a different appearance. So these are those classified here in the fourth place, are a category I called surface treatments, because it doesn't alter the appearance of the stone, of the shape of the stone, but it completely alters the appearance. So in between these four types of techniques, we can explain most of the gemstone cuts that we can see. And that's what we will be seeing throughout this presentation. I would like just to make a small disclaimer here, is that I tried my best to find and give credit to every one artist presented here whose images I put here in the presentation. But since I've been doing this for a long time, I wasn't able to find every one of them. So if I didn't showcase, or even if I misplaced some name, please apologize me, but I tried my best to make it as accurate as possible. And I will be, if someone can reach out to me, if you see any incongruence, I will be more than happy to rectify it. So this way of explaining the cuts is it's a way to break it into parts. So when we see complicated designs such as those by Daryl Alexander and Tom Monsteiner, who cut the green tourmaline on the right, we can be able to understand it easier than by trying to figure it out all at once. For example, if we break the pieces of the Monsteiner design, we can see that it is a cabochon. It has a prismatic ending on the bottom, such as on the pavilion, such as a faceted stones, and it has tiny sculptures along the rim of this faceted of this prismatic bottom. So in this way, we can see that he used three types of cutting styles to achieve this look. And on the left, on Daryl Alexander's work, we can classify this as a sculpture, and it has a lot of surface decoration techniques that he employs, such as the cutting of grooves in lines and both in round cuts, like some cutters call these bubble cuts, and some cutters such as Michael Diver, he calls these optic dishes, and they apply this both to the bottom and to the top of the stone, such as here we can see on the top of the stone a cut like this that magnifies and amplifies the cut. So this is the objective of this classification, is to better understand how it is done. So we can also recognize the artists that did this, because those are signature cuts. And we can also have ideas in combining different techniques and to have our own styles of cutting, as we will see. So Still on the introduction here, we have to talk a little bit about why we cut stones, because in that way we can better understand what we are doing. So when we are cutting stones, we aim at improving their optical qualities. We don't want to make them harder or more resistant. We just are looking at making them more beautiful. And this beauty can be explained by the 5 different optical properties. They can be all explained here, and I'm sorry that I couldn't translate this image, but I will try my best to explain it. It is in Portuguese. It is similar, but I hope you can understand that all these optical properties here that we will go one by one in sequence, they will all be happening here when an incident light beam comes in contact with a transparent object. So when it gets in contact, it can be reflected either in a diffuse. Yeah. Can you hear me again? So it went mute here. I don't know why, but please let me know if you can hear me now.
We can hear you now.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So when it's the light beam, when it enters the stone, it refracts and then it changes direction because it's a more dense medium. And then throughout the stone, it is either absorbed or scattered by fluorescence. And so this is what makes color. This is what makes brightness, the reflection, together with the reflection, together also when the beam is coming out of the stone, it can be again internally reflected and then go back to the perspective of the observer, which is as you will see about the objective of the brilliant cut. So these optics here explain briefly every one of the, now we will see each one in detail, because this is the beauty that we are looking for. When we all know that the cutting of faceted stone on the brilliant cut, it is designed to get the most out of the brilliancy, which is to gather the most of the incident line and to drive it back to what the observer position, which is here. So the beauty of the stone designed for brightness is to shine the most. But there are other kinds of brightness, of kind of play with light that we can do, which is we can want to create those holographic effects, such as Michael Diber does, which is he tries to capture this light inside of the stones. He's not aiming at giving the maximum brightness. He's doing the opposite of it. But it's all working with reflection and refraction, reflection and refraction. Sorry for my English, but it's the same thing, just in opposite directions. We can also play with the color of the stone in a design. We all know that in tourmalines, for instance, we need to cut them shallower in order to have more light going through the stones. This simulation here that you can see, it shows that the deeper the stone here, it goes like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. The deeper the stone is, the more saturated the red of its color it's going to be. So we will not change the color of the material itself, but we will, it's like when we see a pond of water, a small pond, it is colorless because it doesn't hold the color such as a deeper pond will. retain the color. So we can change how it looks by altering the shape of the same stone. Another optical property that we can change with cutting is transparency. The material, it's going to be either transparent or translucent, such as the rose quartz, or opaque, as the dark here onyx. But they are all polished, right? This will not be altering. But if we take the left stone, which is probably a white quartz or a crystal quartz, and we frost it, we add a surface treatment to it, we will alter its transparency, so we will be able to adjust this optical effect and to make it different than we want. Also, another beauty of the stones is it's the fire, which is the decomposition of white light into different colors of the rainbow. So we can use this also, the stones, they have this effect, is mostly seen on highly refractive stones such as diamond and zircon, and it's masked somehow by the color of colored gemstones. So we can still see this here, but it's not as prominent as it is on diamonds. And on the right here, we can see how much it relates to the cutting, to the facets of it, because this here is the plot of the fire effects on a round brilliant cut. And we can see how much it aligns to the facet here. We can almost see the facets here on this stone. So fire is also that we can see here on these pictures, those three on the bottom, they are the same stone under different kind of illumination. And here, the more focused illumination shows some colors, such as the right here, on the right here. Those are these colors. The diamond itself doesn't have any color, it's colorless, right? But this is the light decomposed on the, such as after it interacts with the gem. So we can see both. This is an effect. It's a pleasant effect that we aim for, that we wish it happens when we cut a stone, and together with scintillation that we can see when the stone or the observer or the light source is moving. This is why when we look at the stone, we tilt it a little bit. We want to see the faceting pattern and the pattern of dark and light, the light altering between the facets. So those are all the effects, the beautiful effects that we look for when we are cutting. And so obviously they will be differently applied based on the style of cutting that we have. So I mentioned at the start that I was going to show 4 techniques, right? So let's go through each one of them. In faceting, I also divide the styles of faceting to make it easier to understand and to design on top of it. For example, we have the faceting itself, as I said earlier, it's can be defined as any stone that it's mostly built with or cut with plain. It's a polyhedron, right? It can be. Those are faceted stones, right? They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 facets each. So, but we can divide them in many aspects. We can, for example, divide them and group them by just the traditional faceting techniques that are done with the traditional faceting styles or faceting patterns, which are the brilliant cut, the step cut, and the radiant or scissor cut, which is the brilliant cut adapted to the square shape. And so in such, this is so successful in making a stone be very bright. There is a has been it's synonym with cutting, and it has been spread to most of the stones, and it's very popular cutting. We see this in many stones, the high-end stones. We see it's the most common way of cutting. But even so, it is so long and it's been done in all kinds of stones and everywhere. But we can still innovate with it because we have just to adjust the facets. We can adjust, for example, the outer shape of the stone, the girdle shape, and have, for example, this cut here that uses the step style of cutting, and with this girdle on the shape of the watch. This watch brand designed their own cutting for diamond. It is the same facet that we can see here, the same step cut applied to this design by Bob Keller, which he used diamond brilliance. We call this in Brazil fantasy style cutting. And he used this fantasy style facets to make the drawing of this spider, and then he frosts it he leaves it unpolished to showcase even more. So this is also this cut here. It's a mixed cut. It's a checkerboard cut on the crown, where you can see it's all faceted in a quadricular or a square pattern, and and on the pavilion it has a radiant style of cut, and together they will both give this faceting pattern here, which is different than here and is different than a pure step or square cut, diamond, emerald cut, when they are all different, as you can see. So this is all done by traditional fasting. Lately, starting on the 1990s, when there was a more minimalistic approach to jewelry, some cutters started to have a more clean look. So today we see this it's been there for a long time. We had Michael Freilesbein designing a context cut, which is a patent cut for diamond, and so this style of faceting with large facets, it has a different objective than the traditional fasting. So I thought it was more than adequate to have a different classification for it. So I named this prismatic faceting because, as you can see, it aims at different effects. Then it's not meant to have a lot of scintillation or a lot of fire. It aims at giving a cleaner look to the stone, of allowing us to see the inside of a stone. Imagine those 4 stones here, if they were cut with a lot of facets, it would somehow gem the beauty of the inclusions that you can see here. We wouldn't be able to see the rough on the bottom of this stone here, so it would be very different. These cuts, very clean cuts by Shinobu Marotta from Japan. It's this facet. This is a masterful cut stone. They are all. It has the exact amount of facets that we need to shape the jewel, to shape the stone, and also to allow us to see the inclusions that he highlights very well on his jewelry, on their jewelry. So this is on the left, we have a more ancient jewel that has 1980s, maybe 1990s. I'm sorry for the quality of the picture here. So we can see these aquamarines there, that the cutting with large facets allow us to see the details that these are natural stones. So it's more than adequate to showcase this kind of material. And this cut is also adequate to give the stone a more metallic look and to alter its overall appearance into something else than the usual way we perceive a faceted stone. So another style of cutting that came out recently is the concave faceting, which uses cylinders to cut negative facets on the stones. It can be used also on the girdle to make outlook more, to make a different shape and more baroque, for example, let's say more elaborate outline. And this is a bit, since it's a bit recent, sometimes the cutter are not one, it's not, this is not very widespread. So sometimes the cutter use, sometimes the cutters uses a few facets, sometimes they use a lot of facets, sometimes they use on the wrong shape, or sometimes they use on the wrong material. But when they get it right, it has the effect to add a different kind of brightness to the stone, because it has more area to it, it adds more area to reflect the light. So we have a lot of different interesting works with it. The stones look cut with concave faceting. They have a very distinctive look. Much more, this is revolutionizing the faceting of the gems. And we have seen on the last years a lot of those masters, I think the ones that are the more well-versed into these techniques, they have been pushing the limits of this style of technique and achieving completely new looks for the stones. So hotels that we cannot innovate on cutting, we can always be bringing new styles and new techniques and to be innovating on this and to bring new products into the jewelry segment. Another, still on the fasting, another style of fasting is what I call organic fasting. It is different than the other ones because it's not sit on, it does not depends on the symmetry, such as the traditional and concave fasting do depend on symmetry, because symmetry is something that will increase the brilliance. Here, the objective is different, is to sometimes to have a good yield of the stones, sometimes is to have, for example, a more than perfect approach to the appeal to the stone. Sometimes people want to showcase those on the right, they look like fruits, right? They are a bit irregular. So this is sometimes, when employed right, some kind of skillness of not a little bit of asymmetry. It goes a long way into making a jewelry more appealing. So those are all the kinds of fasting that we can do. And also we can, the other very known cutting, which is cabochon, we can also spread a little bit our understanding about, we can enhance our understanding about cabochon. Because usually if you consider a cabochon with as a shape who is mostly rounded, the name comes from little head in France, in French. So a cabochon is a stone that is mostly rounded. So let's try and expand this terminology into different things. So cabochon is a very versatile cut. It's mostly the most adequate cut to showcase optical effects such as asterism, chatoyancy, which is the cat's eye effect, and adolescence. on a moonstone. So sometimes you can, it is easy to cut, it is easy to set, it's easy to set on stone. And so we can we can go a long way with just cabochon. Just by showing the shine, the brightness on the polished surface, or by showing the color of the stone itself. Sometimes we don't need always to make the cabochon, they go in and out of fashion, but it's a easy stone for beginners to cut, and we can go also and make very, very sophisticated cuts out of this shape. For example, this cabochon here with a treatment, a sculpture on the bottom by a great cutter in Germany called Jörg Stoffel. He makes the most beautiful cuts there, and see how sophisticated it is. We barely see this detail here on the bottom of the stones. And no need to do anything other than a cabochon on the outer part of it. Some stones, such as this collection from Brazilian jeweler Antonio Bernardo, it's called prospecting. He goes after the most different and exotic, and such as this jasper here, and he makes just basic jewels with it, because the gemstone by itself, it's already such a treasure that we sometimes don't need to add a lot of cutting to it. Just a little shaping and polishing it will make a perfect jewel out of it. So cabochons, faceting, and the sculptures that we sometimes call also carving. I like to call them sculptures because I think it's more, I think it has more, gives more weight to the beautiful work, and they are tiny sculptures, right? So this classification I have from, I brought from an American author named Henry Hunt. He has this book called American Lapidary, and he is the one that proposed this classification of some designs, I'm sorry, into curvilinear and angular and mechanical designs. And this is a very good way, his book is a very good way to describe it. His book is from 1996, and so see how easily we can understand, for example, such a complete, complex sculpture by Steve Walters. He explained that the curvilinear design, it is curves, it's composed of curves that end in curves. And this way we can see the stone and understand that it's done with with these rounded tools. And so we can visualize such a shape. This kind of cutting, it gives the stones a organic, a diffuse brightness, and spreads the light evenly across the stones. And the other thing that he gives us, another classification in sculpture, is the angular sculpture. Those are done with the use of acute tools and cutting V shapes instead of U shapes. So when we do this, the brightness of the stone and the pattern of reflection is completely different. It's more, it has a sharper contrast. And so the stones cut into angular sculptures, they have a more metallic appearance, such as the works by master #1 cutter in the world, Picasso of cutting, Mr. Bernd Musteiner, the master of all cutters. So he designed this. He's one of the biggest innovators in cutting worldwide, and we can see characteristically his work and his son's Tom Musteiner as well, with the prismatic faceting and angular sculpture, angular carving sculpture. So together, these two techniques alone, they make their work so unique. We can also, using Hunt's classification, explain some works, some sculptures that have a more mechanical, they are turned or they are milled. And so we have a very mechanical aspect, a very clean aspect to these sculptures. We also have the figurative sculptures such as cameos, both traditional cameos with contemporary techniques to make them, such as completely complete modern approach to the cameo making by Dario Alexander here. And the sculpting, it's endless, right? Because if it is, you can do pretty much anything with the stone based on what it can handle and how well can we, how delicately can we work them. But we can even make the jewel completely out of the stone. We don't even need metal to make jewels, adornments with gemstones. So we saw the three different cutting techniques, and then now we can go to the last one, which are the treatments that we apply to the surface of the gem. And we can see here on the right that all those bowls cut of quartz on the top here, they would be completely different if they were to be polished, right? As we can see here on this series of rings, that we can completely see the difference between a frosted appearance or buffed appearance and the polished one. So this kind of works, such as this, the combination of techniques there by this Italian company, that they made little textures on the surface of those cabochons cut in the form of leaves and shaped with the texture of a lemon. So they produced a different kind of a look that it is a completely new thing. It's a magical bean. It's a magical thing that they came up with. It has the texture of lemon and it's a shape of a leaf. So by putting this together, if it was to be completely polished, such as a cabochon, it would be something else different entirely, right? So we have endless also surface treatment. Sometimes just by leaving some incisions on the top, by designing, making grooves or a little sculpture on the surface, or even keeping the natural aspects of the stone, such as in this one, which has the natural facets, faces, crystal faces on the bottom of the stones. And also we can, with this Brazilian cutter here, she used the iconography of Amazonian, very ancient tribes that live there, Marajoara tribes. And she's from Pará state, which is North Brazil. So she applied this iconography to the pavilion of these quartz that she cut with a large table here and a smaller table on the other side. And so she kept the angle of the stone just in order for us to be able to see exactly the drawing, the surface treatment that she left there frosted for us to see. So it's an example of all those four. I tried to showcase in the most educational way possible, separately, each and one technique, so we can better understand a little bit of some. So now to finish, I will be showcasing a few examples of how we can design jewelry and design gemstones together to have a product and to have a different looks. So this was done by me and my partner, Fernando, for a exhibition in Japan. It is a ring comprised, it's a set of a ring and earrings designed with special cuts for amethysts. I used 4 amethysts together, set in a very exquisite way. It has an architectural approach to these prismatic cuts here. And it's a different, it gives it's a different way of setting. It has a different look, a different feel to it. And we use the same language, the same formal language. And this is another prismatic faceting example of a pendant. This time it wasn't based on architecture, but it was based on a geographical formation, a canyon that we have here in southern Brazil. And so we made the stones such as the bottom of the canyon, and it was produced with a lot of different stones. So it's not a convention. We can see the amethyst, it comes from this place in Brazil, from southern Brazil. So we wanted, this was awarded in a competition here that was, we had to design pieces based on touristic locations in Brazil. So we put together the amethyst and the landscape there and made this piece that it has the name of the canyon. It's this name here on the bottom. And this other one is more technical work that I designed. It is a faceted cut for a special cut for imperial topaz from Brazil, it's only produced nowadays in Ouro Preto, Minas Gerais. We have a colonial background there. It's one of the first cities in Brazil, in Minas Gerais state, and it has this Portuguese architecture characteristic to it. It was imported from Portugal, and we have developed our twist of it here. It's famous for its chiaro escuro. I don't know the word in English for it, but it's the style of painting and of architecture of this time that has a dramatic mixture of both dark and bright colors together. So on the top here, I tried to bring this, either the architectural elements of the city Ouro Preto, which is an old city here in Brazil. So I tried to bring some of this here into the girdle, and also this play of color, of light on the cut. So I think this project was very successful in doing so. And on the top here, you can see this is a computer-generated image. And on the bottom is the picture. Those are all cut stones, and you can see how very precise the simulation that we can do nowadays to design such a cut we can reach. Of course, it's a lot of work. This image here showcases different adjustments that had to be done and were only possible and feasible because they were done by computer. Because otherwise, how many stones we would have to cut, and how much time would I have, how much experience. I know that we have on the group, I don't know if he is here, but I know that in the Zambia group, you have people with over 40 years experience in cutting. So maybe someone with 40 years can understand, they can visualize a stone such as this and cut it like this. But when we use the computer, we can accelerate the learning curve of it very fast, and so young cutters can have this tool to visualize how the stone will come out. It is not only a faceted stone. We can design any kind of stone on the computer and see how it goes, with the benefit of not having to cut a single stone to do so. But this I mentioned, it is a very technical work that I've done. It's over 2 years on the making, and so we adjusted on the smallest details of it, just by adjusting even the position. Now the position of the facets in order to increase the reflection pattern, to make it more appealing, more scintillation. We adjusted the height of it to make it as bright as possible. And we wanted to we studied all the different cuts or patterns and to be able to do so. Of course, it doesn't have to be that difficult of a job. This project here, we also designed this. This was done by the State University of Minas Gerais. We assembled a team there, and we designed these products for the Prospectors Association in the Minas Gerais state city of Coronel Murna, where they are one of the main areas producers of tourmalines there. What happens there is that people from there, they don't get a lot of money out of their stones, because all the stones are exported, and they remain with mostly with the burden of the stones, of the lowest quality possible. I don't know if you can see here the little green spots on it and the pink spots. Those are the quality of tourmalines that it's overburdened there. It's so low quality that you cannot cut, because you won't get, the cut will be more expensive than the finished stones. So it's not cut, even though we found a way, even though it is tourmaline, and we found a way of using it in jewelry, which was by making the whole base with feldspar, and then we inlaid those tourmalines here, and then we cut everything and polished. Afterwards, the cutters there, they came and decorated the surface with pigment made from earth, from local earth. In the same style of the pottery of the area, which is famous. It's a popular art from this region that is very, very important here in Brazil. Jessica was able to visit this when she was in Brazil in 2010, and she can tell you something about it, how different it is, how far away from it, from the capital where we are, it is, and how difficult it is to get there, and it was for us to do this job. But how beautiful it is, and how interesting for us it was to do this project. And I don't know how do you call this there, but here in Brazil we call this bird Angola chicken. If you can tell me afterwards how is it called, this spotted little chicken, I would be very much interested in knowing so. Moving on, we are approaching to the end here. This is the work of Kika Alvarenga, which is a designer. She doesn't have a background on jewelry, on lapidary design or stones, on gemology, but she's able, throughout her career, she was able to come up with very interesting ideas for the stones that she uses on her jewelry. This is just to showcase how everyone can go and venture onto designing gemstones. So she started on to using rough stones, then she moved on to experimenting with different setting, and then she ended up designing her own cuts, because she was never happy with the traditional stones that she found. So this is a drawing by her. She experimented with her pieces always, and she came up with this product that is having a lot of success lately, and she keeps on innovating and moving, and it's nice to see how important, how feasible it is to use, for example, quartz, which is a affordable material to experiment and do so. And also we cannot talk about designing gemstones without showcasing some of the masters. Those guys, they are so good cutters, so they have such a mastership of the material that they are able to expand the boundaries of the cuts and to bring us this beautiful work of art that we can learn a bit from them and to apply the techniques that they willingly share online nowadays. And we can, why not, trying to incorporate some of that language, some of those languages into our works and trying to come up and innovate with something, to doing something else. We have cutters such as American Dairy Alexander, he uses all the techniques, and he uses combination cuts where he uses angular designs and surface treatment here in this stone here, on this set here, combination cuts with part faceted, part sculpture. He uses surface treatments. He uses surface treatments alone on traditional cut facets. And he uses prismatic cutting with sculptures on the bottom and surface treatments to achieve this varied array of repertoire of forms which compose his work. And also Master Munsteiner, who gives us you cannot call this a carving, right? Those are bona fide sculptures. Those are a high form of work art, of object art made with gemstones. So to conclude, the possibilities of lapidary design, they are almost endless, because we can put together all these different shapes, all these different meanings, textures, and to come up always with new things. So why not, right? In this way, we can expand our jewelry, we can expand the objects that we made, even beyond jewelry, into making decorative objects or in art, even why not art with gemstones? So this is what I brought to you. I thank you, and it's my pleasure. I'm sorry I took a little longer than expected.